mile. Guys right has the area.
Roger, we have the area. Hoist operator has the con.
Check guys right out of the con, you clear right, move forward.
So Steve, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do here at Cougar?
I'm Steve Pettie. I'm one of the hoist operators here. I'm a shift lead. I've been here I'm into my 14th year now at Cougar. Prior to that, I was in the military. I served about 10 years in search and rescue there on cormorants. That's probably about it.
So it's probably a lot in there, Steve. 24 years in search and rescue. I'm sure that you've got a few stories to tell. Steve, so explain to me exactly what it is your role as team lead is here at Cougar.
I'm a shift lead.
Shift lead.
So as shift lead, I manage the schedule. I manage, deal with like scheduling people, dealing with just day-to-day issues that come up, getting people's currencies dealt with, other administrative issues.
Steve, now many people wouldn't even understand how the shifts work at Cougar. Explain that to me.
So we work based on an equal time off. So each individual works 182 days, which works out to be half the year. We divide that up by working 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. During your 3 weeks on, we have basically we provide 2 contractual obligations. So we have a SAR obligation as well as a medevac obligation. The SAR we commit 3 people per day, both day and night, year round, and then we provide 1 day and 1 for night for medevac as well.
So basically Cougar just doesn't shut down.
No, we don't.
It just doesn't shut down, and you're one of the teams that you manage that whole operation.
Yep.
Technology is entering into this space as we look behind us here.
Yep.
Tell me about your thoughts around technology entering the rescue specialist arena.
I'm actually quite a technical person. I have a lot of VR experience, particular as well. I myself do a lot of it in my off time. That's kind of my passion. So, like, being a hoist operator, there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of visual acuities as well as haptic acuities that you use when you're hoisting. One of the things I like to think is when you're feeling that cable's like we know we have your eyes and your ears and the way you feel things, but as a hoist operator, that haptic feedback from the cable helps you predict things like swings coming. It helps you feel like, where things are going to go. So when we get into something like this, you get into a VR and you have the visual acuity where you quickly separate. You first get in and you think, okay, this is, not quite reality, but it's close enough to reality. It only takes a few minutes and your brain separates and you actually feel like you're in an S-92. And when you got your hands on that cable, you have that haptic feedback of that, swinging cable and the rotor wash and feeling the weight of somebody on it. So quickly you forget that it's actually a simulation and you start actually feeling like you're hoisting to the water or you're hoisting to a boat or something like that.
I mean, those are strong words, right? I mean, for a guy that's done it for real and now moving into a simulation, you can honestly say you're in the moment, you can feel it, it's there.
Yeah, it being a simulation, there are limitations to it. So there are some things that it doesn't quite do as good as it, but what it does do, it does quite well.
Right. And so it's a trajectory, right? It's you start at this point and then you move towards an actual on the aircraft.
Yeah, I've been a flight instructor for many, many years, and prior to a technology like this, when you go out and you train, you don't really get to control the environment. You have the aircraft, you can create a training scenario, but once you get in that aircraft, you have Mother Nature, and when Mother Nature's your 5th crewman, she doesn't often, let you control the wind or let you control the altitude you're gonna hoist from or the position. But when you have a simulator like this, you can actually turn Mother Nature off. We could take the same crew, the same aircraft, go to the same location today, and we'll go there tomorrow. And even though in theory it should be the same hoist, it is completely a different hoist.
Is that right?
The other issue is, like, for example, if you're hoisting to a boat and, we use a scoring system. So one of the scoring systems we use is a 2, and a 2 is when a student makes a significant error that deviates from the mission. But when you're doing that and you're hoisting to a boat, you can't pause things. You're still, a 30-foot helicopter hovering 40 feet from a moving boat in sea spray. So often it's hard at that moment to transfer that knowledge to a student. When you have a simulator, you can press the pause button, Mother Nature takes a break, and then you can talk without any fear about, hey, this is what your level 2 error was, and then we can technically rewind and start all over again.
It's impressive, right?
Yeah.
And that really didn't exist before this.
No, not to my knowledge.
So, I mean, the future's got to look incredibly bright for you, somebody who's passionate about VR, passionate about search and rescue, and your two worlds collide.
Yeah.
The opportunities must be amazing.
Yeah, because technology like this allows you to, like, you know, it's that initial phases, like, hoisting is kind of like patting your head and rub your stomach at the same time, right? You've got to actually be able to multitask and do two opposing things at the same time. And when you're trying to train somebody like that, it's really hard to get them to multitask. And when you're trying to we use a very, very regimental terminology. There are set words you use, and you don't use any more words than you necessary, and you can only use that small bank of words. So when you do this, simulations like this allow you to focus on that phase. We get to put you in a water hoist, and we get to work on that terminology so that you get that down. And then when you progress into the aircraft, we're not trying to teach the language at the same time we're dealing with what's going on. You've got that basic foundation set, and you can move right into the flying aspect of it.
I've heard it described as you have to walk before you run in many respects, and
Yeah.
I would suggest that the world you live in, you're sprinting. When the bell rings, you're sprinting, and this is a nice trajectory to get you there.
Probably true. Like after a while you do it, it becomes, a lot of what we do becomes muscle memory. Like, you know, I know when I'm hoisting, I'm aware of what I'm saying, but I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. That has become muscle memory at this phase, and probably one of the reasons why I talk as fast as I do is because it is so much muscle memory. But that's kind of the ideology here, is to create the muscle memory of the basic foundations so that we start moving into the dynamic environment of the real world. You don't have to go back and start dealing with those basics parameters.
So what you have up here behind us is a combination of VR.
Yep.
So you've got the whole mock-up of the helicopter in your, and of course it can change for a helicopter. You can just program in.
No, ours is based purely on our S-92.
Okay.
So that's what ours is based on.
Right.
It's a small mock-up of you know, you can see, you know, 8 to 10 feet of our cabin. It has a cable and the cable's probably the more impressive part of it. I know, like, when you put on the VR and, you know, you look around like you normally look around, you see your hands, and you see your hands like you normally see your hands. But when you reach out and you feel the cable, you can move the cable like it was a real cable hanging from the aircraft. When there's a body on it, it feels like there's a body on it. When you get a swing, it swings like it's really swinging.
Is that right?
It's that combination between the visual acuity and that haptic feedback that really create the key to it.
And that must be key, understanding the feel
Yep.
of the cable. Like, that's got to be second nature to a search and rescue specialist, that feeling.
Yeah, and you have to get it down to the point that, like, when you get a swing, you're not thinking about it. It's becoming that second nature, because swings are probably one of the most challenging things we do, right? When you're trying to hoist to a boat, and often, you know, you've got a human-sized person and you're putting them on a boat, and often your target square isn't much larger than him. So when you get a swing, and they can be induced by a multitude of parameters, it's being able to control that swing, mitigate that swing, get him back down to the point where he's not swinging bigger than your area, so you can put him on that area.
Wow. The relationship between the pilot and the hoist operator has to be one of trust and stuff. And
Yeah. I like to use the term blind trust.
Okay.
I like to use that term because he can't see what's going on. So part of the way we do things is I don't just con him. At the same time, part of our terminology is to draw a picture for him. You know, the theory is that pilot should be able to close his eyes, have an idea of what I'm doing, where we're at, even where the man is on the hook. And part of that reason is if we have for example, maybe an engine fail and we need to address an emergency immediately, he doesn't then have to waste time going, hey Steve, where's that guy? Is he like out? You know, he'll have a good idea that, you know, he's halfway out, so we know exactly where our start point on that emergency is, and we don't waste time.
You know, the way you describe this, I want to be a rescue specialist. I can feel the fact. So you say you're hiring. Tell me about, you know, the opportunities that exist here for people that might be looking at this career.
You know, it's funny because you do it a long time. It just, you know, it's like a job to me. Like, you know, whether I was, you know, working at Walmart or working driving taxi or something, it's a job. I've done it so many years. It's just, you know, although I absolutely enjoy it, and I do, and that's why I'm still doing it at this late stage, is because it is really enjoyable. But it's more actually impressive when you see you hire a new guy. Like we've got a bunch of new guys, you know, in their 30s and 40s that we've just hired. And these are people coming in with zero aviation experience, and you see it pretty much, you know, as they start to see it, like to them, it's like, I can't believe what we're doing.
Right.
And you know, I always think back to the very first days, like, you know, when you become search and rescue in the military, you don't often ask for it, you kind of get driven there. So, you know, you go off, you do your basic flight engineer course, and then they hand out your postings, and I got my posting to Cormorant, and then I remember I went to Greenwood, and the first time I was in a Cormorant, we went out, it was just my famil flight, and we were going out to do a boat, and we opened up the door, and there, you know, here was this, you know, 40-foot boat, and we're like, you know, 25 feet from it, and the first thought to me was, what did I get myself into, right?
Tell me, do you remember your first rescue you did?
Oh, yes, yeah, well, my first rescue is memorable because it was the Atlantic Destiny. It was about 120 nautical miles from Yarmouth. And it was just, at that time, it was a medical. But throughout my military career, I'd hoisted to that vessel a total of 3 times, including that first. And the last time it had burnt right to the water line, and we had rescued, you know, the entire crew, a dog, and an outboard motor.
Is that right?
Yeah.
3 times you dealt with that one vessel?
Yep.
Incredible. And how did it make you feel knowing that you were impacting people like that as a rescue specialist?
Like I said, again, to me, it's what we do, right? I'm assuming that doctors are the same when you go in for a surgery, or an ambulance driver is the same, right? It's what you do, you know. And we run a high level of professionalism. You work hard, you know. It isn't just about the mission, like the way that we train and, you know, the entire way we plan a mission. It starts right from mission planning. You get that mission, you work with your aircraft commander, you work with your lead rescue swimmer, your hoist operator, you just plan the entire mission, because it's all about risk mitigation and improving success for mission, right?
It must be cool for a guy like you, been around a while doing this, to see that next wave of people come through and know that you're gonna be part of their training, not only in a traditional format, but with these tools as well.
Yeah, true. Like I said, I've been here 14 years. When I first got here, we were well into a developed program, but it wasn't to where we are, like even a couple of years ago. It's matured quite substantially since I've been here. And during 8 years of that, I was training in standards. So, you know, without sounding rude or crude, the reality is I have my stink all over what we do here.
Right. Because
I came with a lot of experience. I spent a lot of years helping develop the program, right?
Wow. That must make you feel pretty proud about Cougar as well.
Yeah, they're definitely one of my best employers, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's a great way to leave it.
Exactly.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks.